The Dentalpreneur Podcast. Okay, doctor, it's time to put down that handpiece. You're listening to the show dedicated to helping dentists get their lives back. It's time to decrease your stress, increase your profitability, and regain your passion. Now introducing your host, Dr. Mark Costas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dentalpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Costas. What is up, my friends? I hope you're doing great out there today in podcast land. I'm very excited because I have a new friend that I want to get to know at a deeper level during a conversation today. Let's welcome Jaren Argyle to the podcast. He is the founder of The Elevated Dentist, has been operating his dental practice in Northern Utah for over 20 years since graduating from the University of Connecticut in 2005. He's a certified life coach as of 2022, and he focuses on helping dentists find fulfillment in both their professional and personal lives through coaching and community. Outside of work, he enjoys spending time with his family and engaging in hobbies like mountain biking, water surfing, skiing, and snowboarding. Jaren, welcome to the podcast, buddy.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, good to be with you too. We were just off air talking about snowboarding and how terrible I am at it, and you're kind of more of a seasoned professional over there. But this is going to be my year, Jaren. I'm committing to you right now, and everybody listening to the podcast, this is going to be my year to get much better at snowboarding, because it is a really, really cool way for me and my youngest son to spend time together, because my other two sons are out of the house, and my wife does not like snowboarding, and my son loves it, and he's very, very good. We started at the same time, and he got very good, and I stayed very beginner level. So I'm committing to you right now that I'm going to get much better this year. Any tips?
Well, first of all, I'm going to make sure that I hold you to it. I'm going to follow up with you, make sure that that's happening, because it's phenomenal. One of the things that I love about recreational sports in the outdoors, snowboarding being one of those, is it just gets you out in the elements. It allows you to be able to experience nature. And I think that there's a huge value for us in our lives to be able to get out and do that. And for you, it's even another benefit to spend quality time with your son.
Yeah.
And I think there's a ton of value when we find things that are of similar interest with our kids.
Yeah.
And are able to do that. So not only will you enjoy the sport, but you'll enjoy your time with your son even more as you go up there and do it. So as far as advice, suggestions, it's funny, off air we were talking about falling leaf, and what falling leaf is basically is it's an initial way that you learn how to snowboard so that you don't risk catching your backside edge. Your backside edge is always uphill in falling leaf.
Right.
And it's kind of funny, and I'd even say even in your business and professional life, Mark, if you think of it more like that, it's not until you truly commit that you're going to see gains.
Right.
And it's also not until you experience some of those hard falls that you're really going to be able to see the true gains. And so wear your padding if you need to, get some shoulder pads, some knee pads, whatever. Make sure you got your helmet on. And don't hesitate to go onto that toe side edge, because it exposes your heel side to the downhill side.
Yep.
And that's when people who are learning how to snowboard really take hard falls, because you catch that hillside edge, catches in the snow, stops the board, but your body keeps going, and then it kind of whiplashes you into the ground and you hit your head.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not that. I don't know what your height is, but the shorter you are, the better. I'm 6'2", so when I go down, I go down hard.
I'm a 5'9" guy, so I won't go down as hard. My center of gravity is much lower than yours. Let's put it that way. There's not a lot of huge benefits to being vertically challenged, I'll call it, but that is definitely one of them. And the fact that I can fit into a cockpit of an airplane pretty easily. So, all right, Jaren. Hey, man, let's talk a little bit about your history in dentistry. Are you a legacy? Do you have other people in your family that kind of led you down the dental path?
I don't. My story is I was going into medicine. I was in college. I was preparing to take the MCAT. In November of 2001, I had a son. My wife and I had been married. We'd only been married for about a year and a half. and she got pregnant about 6 months into our marriage. Not something we'd planned on. I tell everyone, I don't know if we didn't know how things worked or what the deal was.
You know how things work now, right? Okay, good.
Yeah, exactly. She got pregnant, and we had our son November 2001. It would have been the next spring that I was going to be taking the MCAT.
Okay.
And, it did something. It changed something. It made me think, do I really want to go into medicine? Do I want to have the call schedule that medical doctors have?
Yeah.
And I just kind of started thinking about it. And I had a good buddy who was going to dental school. He'd been accepted into dental school, was going the next fall. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Hey, Jaren, have you even thought about dentistry?" And believe it or not, I hadn't even thought of it. I don't know why it hadn't even crossed my mind. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any family members in it. My dad is a nurse anesthetist.
So cool.
He was in the medical profession, but he was also on call 24/7. He was the only anesthesia individual they had at our local hospital where I grew up in northern Utah.
Wow.
And so he was on call all the time. And I saw that my entire childhood, him getting called off, and we'd go somewhere and he'd have to leave because he didn't need to go into the hospital. Our town kind of is at the intersection of two of the major freeways that come down through northern Utah.
Okay.
And so there are always motor vehicle accidents, all sorts of different things going on.
Yeah.
And so he'd have to take off, and that kind of hit home. And I was like, I don't know that I want to have that lifestyle. And my buddy mentioned, "Hey, you thought about dentistry?" And I had two dentists that live in my neighborhood. One of them was one of my good friend's dads. Another one was just a guy in the neighborhood that I knew well. And I kind of looked at both of their circumstances, and I thought, seems like a good gig. They seem to be happy. They seem to have adequate money to take care of their families, seem to have adequate time off. They're always going to their kids' activities and different sports. And so I actually called them up and went and visited their offices and kind of saw what it entailed, and kind of never turned back. That spring, instead of taking the MCAT, I took the DAT. I obviously had all of the courses and everything that would qualify me to go to dental school. And then I got accepted into a couple different schools, decided to go to the University of Connecticut. Mm-hmm. Had an absolute phenomenal time out there, enjoyed all 4 years. A lot of different things kind of happened out there just from a life standpoint, but then came back to Utah. I looked for different opportunities, and really it was kind of sad, the different opportunities that I was looking at. I remember my fourth year in dental school, I came out in late winter, I guess, January, February, and I did probably 11 to 12 interviews with different practices.
As associate interviews?
What's that?
To be a potential associate in those practices?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, my ideal situation coming out of dental school, ideally I would have loved to come into a practice that there was a dentist that was anticipating retiring within the next 4 or 5 years, work as an associate, purchase the practice from them, have a mentor to kind of help guide me along the way.
Sure.
Didn't quite turn out that way. I actually didn't find there was like one position that was kind of like that, but then the dentist realized that he wasn't quite ready to have an associate yet, so he didn't even bring anyone on. That was my first exposure to how poorly run dental practices can be, and how much of business operators we are not.
Right.
If we don't get the right training, because this individual, he had advertised for an associate, had done all the work, but really hadn't talked to an accountant, hadn't looked at his numbers, hadn't really realized my practice isn't quite ready for an associate. And so the position I did find was kind of a really unique situation. It was almost before the concept of DSOs, but it was like a mini DSO here in Utah. It was two business guys. They owned 3 or 4 other practices in the state of Utah, and they had just acquired the practice that I was looking at in September, the year prior.
Okay.
And they were looking to get rid of it by June. And their explanation of why they were going to get rid of it was they were purchasing another practice. They needed the working capital. This other practice was a 2-doctor practice with double the income or the revenues, and really no extra cost for themselves to run that practice, just more profit for them. So, that being said, the practice they had purchased, they had just acquired it in September from a dentist who was filing bankruptcy.
Okay.
So you can imagine a 4th-year dental student meeting with these guys, and hearing that I'm going to be the 3rd dentist in this practice within 9 months.
Yeah.
They very wisely met me in the office, the practice, to show it to me, and it had only been built 2 or 3 years prior, so it had everything very nice.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Beautiful space, large, just a great dental office as far as the actual the decor and the way the flow of it. And as a dental student, you just walk in there and you're like, and I was so used to these old antiquated practices out in the backwoods of Connecticut.
Yeah.
We would go and look at, and I'm like, man, this is amazing. And, you know, I worked with an accountant to kind of find out, you know, what are the numbers, what was the deal with the previous dentist going bankrupt. And I think he just was probably on a personal level a little bit too stretched, and probably had some poor loan structures and stuff, because the practice itself seemed to be a healthy practice. It's still a small practice.
Okay. How many ops?
What's that?
How many ops was it, Jer?
4 operatories.
4 ops. Okay. How many square feet?
4 ops, room for a fifth.
Room for a fifth. Okay. Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
And so I kind of did a little more due diligence and put down some earnest money for it, and graduated May 15th and bought the practice June 15th. And I've been in the same practice ever since. And that's one of the things that's really helped me is, I'll tell you, Mark, I'm by no means the most rich dentist you'll ever meet. I do well. I do great, much better than the average income for a traditional dentist.
Mm-hmm.
But I may be the happiest dentist that you'll ever meet.
That's cool.
I've structured my practice. I've built my practice, and I've controlled the growth of the practice to be what I want, and to be what supports me, supports my family, supports team members. And in fact, recently we're at a point where we need to look at getting an associate, but I don't want to, because I don't want to have to deal with the headaches
Mm-hmm.
of it. And I'm just at a very happy place in life. I'm at a very content place where I can do the things that I want to do. I've got as much time off as I want to do, as I want to have. I've got plenty of time available to be able to work on my, on the elevated dentist, to be able to help out dentists
Mm-hmm.
in that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been an interesting journey, just because it truly speaks to my true passion. I love dentistry, love doing dental work and taking care of patients, but I feel that there's so many others that can do a great job doing dentistry as well.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't very many of us out there that can really help bless the lives of other dentists and really help them to be able to achieve and excel and find more fulfillment in their lives.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool mission. Answer me this. Why do you feel as though it's time to bring on an associate if you are loving your lifestyle and the amount of clinical dentistry that you're doing?
And I maybe misspoke. I wouldn't say it's time to bring on an associate.
Okay.
But the demands of the practice.
Oh, I see.
In fact, we're fairly heavily insurance based.
Okay.
And I think that the next step for us is to start getting off of insurances, kind of decreasing the demand,
Mm-hmm.
And being able to actually get paid and compensated what we should be getting paid and compensated for,
Yeah.
in order to be able to do that. And that's something that we're more working on towards doing, is going more towards fee for service,
Mm-hmm.
Rather than bringing on an associate.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as the elevated dentist gets bigger and bigger, I want to be able to move more into my passion and more into where I feel I can have the greater good in the world,
Mm-hmm.
Through helping out dentists and being able to help them have much more successful lives.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, as a business coach, I would say, well, yeah, if you're loving your current situation and you're reluctant to bring on an associate, obviously, the next question I would ask is, how many PPOs are you taking? And let's see a list of those and the fee schedules associated with those. Just draw kind of a line across this level. Everything below there gets dropped, and then you're controlling the income or the inflow of patients immediately, probably, and not having to disrupt the current flow too much as far as bringing somebody else in, et cetera. Especially in your space, it's going to be difficult for a 5 operatory to have 2 full-timers. So you would have to probably work something out with extended hours or a couple shifts, or maybe a part-timer, but anyway, it sounds like you have it all figured out.
We definitely want to have 2 full-timers because I'm not even a full-timer right now. We do about 26 hours, patient hours right now in my practice.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
So we got plenty of room to bring someone else in there, but like I said, it just doesn't fit well for me. So I think that for sure the fee for service and dropping some of the getting rid of the worst insurance is the next step for us.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Well, when I received an email about you, and looking at your bio, you use the word fulfillment, which is one of my favorite words, right? I mean, there's a difference between happiness and fulfillment. Happiness could just be, a 6-pack and, and a football game for some people. Fulfillment's a totally different thing. It's a feeling of, contribution to the world. It's a feeling of, you're creating a legacy for the people that you care for. You're making a dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs would say. And that word, unfortunately, seems more and more rare with time passing and the pressures of practice ownership and the squeeze of insurance companies, staff shortages, unrealistic expectations of patients, a number of different things that make our profession challenging, particularly if you're the owner of a dental practice. So when I see something like your goal is to increase the fulfillment for dentists, that's something that I love to chat about. Unfortunately, you probably know this, Jaren, that dentistry is pretty high in a lot of things. We're number 3 as far as incident rate, second to or behind veterinarians and family physicians. So we're in the 3rd position, which is good that we're not number 1, but it's still a pretty sad place to be. Extremely high incidence of alcohol and drug use, high incidence of divorce, high incidence of dissatisfaction when it comes to career choice. So these are across the board statistics that don't bode well for dentistry as a profession. But, when I talk to somebody like you and you're like, I'm extremely happy, I'm extremely fulfilled, and my goal is to help other dentists to get there. What is it that you talk to dentists about, and what are you finding across the board as some general themes as far as why we're so unhappy as a profession?
So one of the first things is just understanding who goes into dentistry.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are, in essence, naturally selected for this field for multiple different reasons.
Good point.
One of the first things that I notice is the majority of dentists are perfectionists or awfully close to it.
Mm-hmm.
We're high achievers, mm-hmm. and we care for other people. That's a pretty tough combination in and of itself.
Good point.
But then you look at what happens inside of the industry. And this is one of the things I love. I was kind of looking at your mastermind group that you've put together and absolutely love the concept of that and the opportunity for vulnerability
thank you.
In that mastermind. I think that we get together as dentists too often and solely speak clinically. That's where we're comfortable. We're mm-hmm. comfortable learning how to do things with our hands, mm-hmm. comfortable talking about root canals, comfortable talking about how to implant placement and the things that can go wrong with it and how we can prevent that. But we're not comfortable talking about our failures. We're not comfortable talking about what is not going well in our practices.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do, people ask how we're doing, and we're doing great. We're doing fine, because I don't want my buddy down the street to know that my practice is having a difficult time, mm-hmm. or that maybe I don't feel very confident or competent in some of my skill levels. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In 2021, the ADA did a wellness survey, and they asked the question, do you sometimes doubt your competence? And it came back that 46% of dentists doubt their competence.
Interesting.
At some level. Very interesting study for you to look at. It talks about depression, anxiety. Anxiety increased, and I can email that over to you pretty quick and easy.
I would love that.
Anxiety increased they did the study the survey in 2003, 2015, and 2021. Anxiety tripled from 2015 to 2020 or 2021 amongst dentists.
Wow.
Depression, and this was self-reported depression. This wasn't clinically diagnosed depression.
Okay.
54% of dentists experience moderate to severe levels of depression in that survey. And that was up from 26% in 2015.
Wow.
So doubled.
Holy cow.
And I think because of who we are and the environment that we work in and the expectations that we hold ourselves to, we put ourselves into what I call the perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
And it really it pushes us towards those things. We're also very, for one, we have egos. I mean, no question. And so we don't seek out help. We think that we can handle it, or if we can't handle it, we should be able to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the combination of all of those things, the other thing that plays into it is dentistry is an extremely successful profession.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go very far. Look at all the venture capitalist groups that are coming in and buying up things. Look at all of these business people that are interested in our practice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's partly because we don't do a great job being efficient in running them, but it's also partly because it's an extremely successful profession.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers on it's quite interesting. A 5-year survival rate for a small business in the United States is 50%. The 5-year survival rate for a dental practice is 98%.
Wow.
And so these groups know this, and they know how to come in and streamline our processes that we've been going and doing for years. And I'll tell you right now, Mark, my practice is by no means the postcard for the ideal practice.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many inefficiencies in our practice, guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
We're constantly trying to work on SOPs and getting systems in place, but it's a constant thing. And if you have staff turnover, it's a whole nother thing. And you're constantly, and so many dentists don't focus on that. We focus more on getting better clinically.
Mm-hmm.
We focus on being able to do that. So between the combination of needing to become better clinically and needing to run a business, we don't take care of ourselves. I mean, if you think of most dentists, a huge number of them, they don't have a hobby.
It's true.
Their hobby is to go talk about dentistry.
So true.
They don't know how to talk about anything else. And we let that drag into our personal lives. It affects our marriages. It affects our relationships with kids. The whole perfectionistic aspect, I mean, I can tell you story after story about how horrible of a husband I've been because of that.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, I see inefficiencies. I see areas of improvement. And so I don't spend a lot of time telling individuals how good they do. I spend more time recognizing, oh, here's a little area that we can get better. Let's get better in this area. Mm-hmm. And as a husband, that's not a good quality, not a good trait. And especially when you have a spouse that doesn't have that high of expectations from that standpoint. They're very easygoing, very go with the flow. And so unless something's just really out of whack, they're good with it. Mm-hmm. But my mind is like, we've got to be as streamlined as possible, as efficient as possible. It's going to allow us to have the most happiness and the most fulfillment in life. But I've got to let that go sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I've got to realize other people have really good ideas too. And that goes with my team relationships, being a leader in the practice. I think we don't spend near enough time truly understanding true leadership qualities, and being able to have an open door policy with our team members and help them to be able to feel comfortable coming to us. Because when it comes down to it, some of the best ideas for our practices are going to come from our team members because they're down in the trenches. Mm-hmm. The best way for my hygiene program to be successful and be profitable is going to come from my hygienists because they're in that day in and day out, and they can see the little inefficiencies that I don't see. But if they're afraid to come and talk to me, or they're afraid that it's going to be something there, it can be a little bit more difficult for them. So I think it's really a combination. Long answer to your question, but it's a combination of our personalities that we have. I think some of those are ingrained in us as we go through dental school. You think of the level of comparison and competitiveness, and that pushes right out into our communities in the dental world. You think of how often the dentists in the city of Syracuse, Utah get together and truly are vulnerable with one another. Half the time we don't even talk to each other because we're worried that we're going to steal each other's patients. There's more than enough people in the world that need to come to the dentist. Statistically, they say, I believe it's only about 60% of the population, 50 to 60% of the population that come to the dentist regularly. I mean, we could spend more time working to get that other 40 to 50% into our offices rather than worried about someone else taking it because they learn about our secret sauce or the special stuff that we do in our office.
Yeah.
I'm an open book here. I'm happy to share anything with any of the dentists in Syracuse or any of my surrounding companies.
That's cool.
Because if I can prevent a younger dentist from having to go through some of the difficulties I had to go through, I would love to do that. I would love to make their life more simple if I can. But I don't know as dentists if we have that mindset.
Yeah. Wow. So many good insights there. I do want to push on one of your points, which I think is, right on. And that is our kind of perfectionist proclivity for people that are in this profession. And that does end up being a burden to some degree as far as the whole idea of fulfillment and feeling satisfied or content with their current situation. So what if we want to, first of all, we recognize that what a lot of the things that you're saying is accurate about ourselves. What if we are interested in becoming a reformed perfectionist and becoming more fulfilled? What are some action steps that you work on with some of the people that you coach?
So a couple of different things go there. One of the coaches I worked with, it was interesting. She kind of coined the phrase doing B+ work. And as a dentist and as a perfectionist, that almost sounds like, how could I ever not give my patient the best? But learning to be okay with that, learning to be okay with, because if you think of B+ work, B+ for everyone else in the world is amazing. But for a dentist, it's not. For a perfectionist, it's not. And the other amazing thing about B+ work, a lot of times we prevent ourselves from moving into things that we should as quickly as we should. I sometimes say that people are more cavalier than me, but I'm a fact finder. And I've got to research until I'm dead to make sure that something's the right thing for me to do and to figure that out. But what I've learned is, and one of the coaches I've worked with has helped me with this, is the sooner you start doing that, the faster you're going to learn it, because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have different things that don't work out as well as you want them to, but you figure out how to make that. Now, when you're dealing with someone's health, there's obviously a certain level of care that has to be taken care of.
Sure. Yep.
So I'm not a big fan of just taking a quick weekend course and going and diving into something. I like to do a little bit more, but not needing to take 5 years of courses on that and then jumping into it, because you stint your growth and your ability to learn in doing that. And I think this works even better in our team situations and within other things, is where going and being willing to not have everything polished perfectly before you put it into place.
Yeah.
Because once you get it into place, it's going to grow and it's going to be refined that much more quickly, way faster than us sitting on the sidelines working it through our head.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the first thing, is do B+ work.
Okay. I like it.
It's still well above average. And it's very clinically acceptable. That being said, every single patient I work on, I try and do my very, very best. But we know that we're working in a biological environment. We know things happen. We know people swallow when they shouldn't be swallowing, and different things happen that way. So being okay with something that doesn't go perfectly, striving for it to go perfectly, but being okay. Another huge concept that has been beneficial from an individual, his name is Dr. Benjamin Hardy.
Oh, yeah.
And he is an organizational psychologist.
Yeah, he did a book with Dan Sullivan recently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I've worked with Dan Sullivan's group. I've worked with Ben Hardy's group, had a big involvement with a lot of them. And you'll see a lot of the things that I fall in line with Dan Sullivan's stuff, especially when it comes to entrepreneurs and business owners.
Sure.
But he did 3 books with Dan Sullivan.
Okay.
And they're Dan Sullivan's concepts, but Ben is an author. And so he worked with Dan to publish the books. So Dan really didn't write any of those books. He just came up with the concept and worked with Ben to make sure they were written. But the book that I really, when it comes to perfectionism, it's called The Gap and the Gain. And the whole concept of that is high achievers tend to live in the gap. And the gap is when we compare ourselves to the ideal. The problem with that is if you're a high achiever, the ideal is like the horizon. It's constantly changing. It's constantly, as you get further along in your journey and become better, you change your goal. You move that goal further out to something more difficult to obtain. And what happens with that is you constantly are failing. You're never achieving that goal. And so you're always in the gap. Where the gain, and you can live in the gap with other individuals. I can see the dentist that practices or the orthodontist that practices across the parking lot from me, and I see him pull up in his Porsche Carrera 911. And I'm like, I don't have that. And I can live in the gap. I can do the same thing when I'm in a continuing education course, when I see this amazing presentation and see this fantastic cosmetic work that's being done up on the screen. And I can say, you know what, mine doesn't quite look like that. I'm not quite as good at that. I'm living in the gap. And the gain is when we compare ourselves to where we came from. So I look at my dental work and I say, you know what, this is twice as good as what I did 5 months ago or 10 months ago. We look at anything, it's all about our reference point.
Yep.
And if we put our reference point to where we came from instead of where we're wanting to go, it changes everything. And I think, and I know, at least with the clients that I've worked with, the majority of dentists live in the gap. And we're miserable because we live in the gap. And we're constantly trying to become better. And we are becoming better in all aspects of life, but we don't recognize that because we're not comparing it. We're not living in the game. And that's the other advice I'd give to dentists is that single-handedly one of the best mindset or perspective books that a dentist can read. It's super simple read. It's about 200 pages and very, very simple concepts.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that book a lot. And, you know, it made me kind of reflect on the fact that, geez, how many times do we as high achievers, as dentists, set a goal? Say, for instance, I want to be $1 million producer. Or I want to be $1 million practice. And as you get close to that, and it looks as though you're going to achieve that goal, before you even celebrate the fact that you're going to accomplish that goal, you reset the goal to $2 million, right? So you sail on past your original goal and you start working towards this new goal. The finish line is always constantly moving. The goalpost is always constantly moving. So we never really take the time to reflect on our progress. In fact, all we're looking at is this gap between where we currently are and where we want to be, even the new definition of the goal line. So yes, I love that. And instead, maybe taking the measurement from Oh, geez. 5 years ago, I was right here. And now, I've experienced, 49% growth in the last 3 years, so there's so much wisdom in that. And I really did enjoy that book. I like all the books that Ben Hardy writes, but Dan Sullivan's fundamental kind of lessons are really, really valuable, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. There's so much value to them. And I mean, Dan's been doing this for a long time. He's been working with entrepreneurs for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a very honed technique and method to help entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, any practice owner is an entrepreneur, whether we think we are or we're not.
Yep, for sure. Are you, when you got your coaching certification, were you seeking to become a coach to dentists, or were you looking to just be like an executive level coach for anybody that was needing direction?
So I personally wanted to work specifically with dentists.
Okay.
One, I know it.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I've done for the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Two, I've been through a lot of the difficulties that dentists go through. And three, there's not any other profession that I can think of, besides maybe vets and veterinarians and family practice docs, that would benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost is one of those things that, some things I feel like we're almost called to in life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that, as I was actually in a mastermind group with dentists, and I was listening to the different dentists who all were extremely financially successful.
Mm-hmm.
But there was so much misery in the room. There was so much unhappiness and just lack of fulfillment that it kind of dawned on me that, if you're familiar with a lot of the stuff, and in Who Not How, they talk a lot about
Mm-hmm.
unique ability.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Polish with Genius Network calls it your zone of genius. You can call it being in the zone. But I feel that this is my unique ability. I've lived it my life. I'm always constantly looking to grow and improve, but within the limits and and I won't even say limits, but within the guidelines of being able to be fulfilled still. Always looking for that improvement, always looking for that growth, but always being content and recognizing that there's fulfillment. And I just feel like there's so many dentists that don't have that ability, or are not aware that they have that ability, or just don't have the focus. And so, yeah, when I went and did my training, I 100% had the desire to be working with dentists.
Got it. So you did use the word awareness, and I think that self-awareness is a huge part of kind of working your way through this perfectionist kind of syndrome, this lack of fulfillment syndrome. How do you kind of encourage your clients to be more self-aware that, okay, this kind of mental loop that's going on, this negative self-talk is what's kind of leading to your misery and your lack of fulfillment? What are some ways that we could be more self-aware and catch ourselves when we're not helping ourselves out with this, with a negative self-talk, or just kind of an attitude of perfectionism, or the inability to objectively look positively at our current situation?
So, and that's where it gets tough, because there's not really a prescribed treatment plan that you can give someone to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. There are some people who can read and gather that and then apply it through books, mm-hmm. Through podcasts. Like some people will listen to this podcast and it will resonate, and they'll be able to move forward with things. They'll be able to start doing things. Mm-hmm. But the majority of individuals will hear it, they'll agree with it, and they'll say, yeah, that's true. Yeah, and then they move on.
Yeah.
We get, one of the things that I find is probably the most beneficial for clients is first defining their destination. Figure out where it is that you want to go. Mm-hmm. So many of us, we get into our practice, we're so worried about learning better hand skills that we take a bunch of continuing education courses. Once we start feeling more competent in those areas, we start to focus on the business. Mm-hmm. Well, in the meantime, our practice is growing. And it's growing in whatever direction it wants to grow because we're not controlling that. So then I start doing all sorts of procedures that I don't want to do. I start doing working hours that I don't want to work. And I get too busy, and the practice runs me instead of me running the practice.
Sure.
And so one of the first things that I encourage any of our clients, and in fact, we do a free consultation for individuals. And when I do that consultation, one of the first things I ask them is, where do they want to be in 3 years? Where do they want to be in 5 years? If you and I were to be having the same conversation 3 or 5 years from today, what would have to be happening in order for you to be able to be happy both personally and in your professional life? Helping individuals take a little bit of time. And it's interesting, I give them about 3 or 4 minutes to come up with that. But sadly, that's 3 or 4 minutes more than they've ever taken to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's just like what Stephen R. Covey said in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Number 2 is start with the end in mind. Most dentists, in my opinion, don't even know what end they're working towards. And there's a great graphic that he uses in a book, and it's got a ladder that's leaning up against the wall. And we spend so much time climbing the ladder of success until we realize the ladder's on the wrong wall. And I don't think that means that you're in dentistry or you're not in dentistry. I think that means you're in dentistry, but you're not practicing dentistry in the way that you were meant to practice dentistry, in the way that is in line with your core values, in line with what you want in life. And that's where fulfillment comes from, is when we associate ourselves with individuals and when we're doing the things that line up with our core values.
Yeah. Really good stuff.
So that'd be the first thing I'd suggest. The second thing I'd suggest is get out there and hire a coach. And when I say a coach, I'm not talking about making your practice more profitable. I'm talking about investing in yourself, because ultimately your practice, your personal life can only go so far if you're only at a certain level. The higher that you can bring yourself, the more capable your practice is going to be, the more capable your team's going to be, the more capable you're going to have fulfillment in your personal life.
Love it, dude. Really, really good stuff today, Jaren. What's the best way for people to go about reaching out to you?
So everything's right on our website. And when we created the name of this company, when I was putting together the website, I really wish I maybe would have named it something, because it is theelevateddentist.com. Problem is there's 2 E's and 2 D's that are right next to each other. So make sure you put the elevateddentist.com, or else you may be going somewhere else.
Yeah.
We have an awesome assessment that we've created for people. Mark, I was just going to mention, I noticed your 4 futures that you have that you work with, and then the daily journaling and stuff. That's the mind, the meaning, the muscle, the money.
Yes.
We have 4 that line right up with it. What we call our wheel of life, and it has 4 different categories, and it's financial health, it's mental health, physical health, and relational health. And your meaning would fall into the relational. And it's interesting because the relational health, I just got done reading the book, The Good Life, and it's actually written by the director and the assistant director of the Harvard Adult Development Study, which has been going on for 84 years.
Yeah.
And if you want to learn about fulfillment, and you want to learn about what really fills people's buckets, it boils down to relationships.
Yeah.
But you've got to have money, you've got to have good health, you've got to have a good mindset in order to be able to have those good relationships. And that's what's going to bring fulfillment. So go to theelevateddentist.com. We have that Wheel of Life assessment. It's free of charge. It asks for your email. It's going to put you into an email funnel. If you don't want to be part of an email funnel, just hit unsubscribe as soon as you get that first one. But what it does is it's going to rank you in 12 different categories based on your own answers to the questions. And it will physically it'll generate a wheel for you that'll show you exactly where you're doing better and where you're having a little bit more difficult time. And it has some helps there that come with it, a little PDF that'll tell you, hey, if you're having a hard time in this, here's a couple of different things. I mean, when you mentioned how do we get past this perfectionism, how do we get past all these different things, the helps are inside of that. Go to the website, theelevateddentist.com, do the Wheel of Life assessment. It's amazing the eye-opening it will do for dentists, and the help it can give you. There's consultations on there. It talks about our coaching programs. We do a one-on-one coaching program that's a little bit higher touch, where we're working specifically only with you. We also have a group coaching program that's been very beneficial. The one-on-one is incorporated into the group coaching too, so we're able to get you into a community of like-minded dentists that really are wanting to gain more fulfillment out of their life.
You're doing good work, my friend. I'm really, really glad that I got a chance to kind of dig into what it is that you do and your perspectives and your philosophies. Really good stuff. We have a lot of the same reference points. We listen to the same influencers. We read the same books, and we have a lot of the same. Obviously, your Wheel of Life quadrants are very similar to the Four Futures, so we have a lot of the same philosophy. So it was really great to have an opportunity to get to meet you.
It was great to meet you, Mark, and I really appreciate you and letting me be on the podcast. I think that you're doing amazing things for the world of dentistry. You're helping in so many different facets, and it's something that's needed and very appreciated from my perspective. And again, if you make it up here to Utah, let me know. We'll go out. We'll take you to some of those green hills that you don't have to worry about doing falling leaf, and we'll teach you how to get onto that toe side edge.
I'm going to do it this year. I'm going to do it this year, Jaren.
I'm going to hold you to it. And like
Please
I said,
do.
if you're up here in Utah, reach out to me.
I do. I need an accountability partner. I appreciate that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the founder of The Elevated Dentist, Jaren Argyle.